Welcome to WJ Live, where we equip listeners with the truth. My name is Andrew J. Sciascia. I'm an associate staff writer with the Western Journal. Today, I'll be joined by George Upper, Josh Manning, and Floyd Brown as we discuss the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett, why liberals are pathologically fearful, and how the Wall Street Journal is losing its credibility. I wanted to talk about the topic that was on everyone's mind before the president got COVID-19. The Supreme Court. News cycle's moving pretty fast right now. Unfortunately, Lindsey Graham and the Senate Republicans, McConnell, they're not moving quite as fast as I might like with the Supreme Court nomination of Amy Coney Barrett of the 7th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. We now have a timeline set up. It's very much official. Graham has come out on Fox News, and he has come out and reiterated that timeline that they're going to start 6 days from now, next Monday. They're going to start with hearings in the Senate Judiciary Committee. They're going to hear her for an introductory day. They're going to do 2 days of questioning, and then they're going to have several days of markup before a final panel vote. And they're going to, he said, without question, report out by the 22nd of October. That leaves about 11 days before Election Day. And they're saying that they want this done by Election Day. I know that it's possible, given the fact that they are all in until January in their positions. It is very much possible that they can do it after the election, but they've pretty much spoken on this timeline being pre-election. Now, on average, I was looking back on some congressional research data that on average, one from panel at the Senate Judiciary Committee to floor vote, on average, it's about 12 days over the last 15 candidates, barring Brett Kavanaugh, who was obviously a special case. Now, I'm a bit worried that his timeline for this is about 11 days.
You should be worried. I mean, what you have to realize is the Republicans in the Senate, by and large, are swamp creatures. Most of them were there, decades before Donald Trump even came to Washington, and they're always, ready to jump ship. And it only takes one or two of them to jump ship, and this thing gets put off till after the election. I have zero faith in the Republicans in the U.S. Senate, and so it's not surprising. I don't even know why they're holding hearings. They're not required by the Constitution to hold hearings.
They just vetted her 3 years ago to go on the circuit court.
And they should just, hold a vote, get it done, mark her up, and put her in the Supreme Court.
Why do you think there's a difference? What's the rush to have it done before elections? Before the election, I should say.
I mean, I think like Floyd was saying, actually, you have a perfect excuse for some of those swamp dwellers. Susan Collins has already decided she's going to vote against. Murkowski has flip-flopped on whether she will vote against, but has said she doesn't like the process. You wait until after the election day, and a couple of Republicans lose their seats, and they say, well, I don't feel comfortable voting for a lifetime appointment now that I'm on the way out. I'm in the lame duck in my term. You've given them the perfect excuse. It needs to be done beforehand. Otherwise, they're going to start jumping ship because decorum and decency are going to get in the way, and we know that the Republican establishment loves those terms far more than they love success.
One good thing that could come out of actually having a hearing, it'll be painful for Barrett, but one good thing that could come out of it is watching the left throw everything they can at conservative Christianity and doing it on the record. There will undoubtedly be some fantastic sound bites of people talking about how dangerous the people of praise are.
Right.
Yeah, well, especially with, the former vice president and candidate Biden running around the country talking about how he's such a man of faith and, kind of wearing his Catholicism on his sleeve, even though I think at least one bishop said he shouldn't receive communion because of his position on abortion. So it's kind of really a strange message, but he is trying to convince people that he is a person of faith. And if she's up there on Capitol Hill and you see just the rawest, grossest form of anti-Catholic bigotry,
like Feinstein last time,
you're gonna be exposed. And so I think you're right, Josh. This hearing helps Donald Trump.
I think it will. And I think it's better. We have a discussion in the newsroom every so often about how much coverage do we want to give the fringe left? Because when you cover them, you risk potentially kind of normalizing that a little bit. I've always thought you do cover it because I think it's better when the American people see these people without their masks on. And that hearing is going to be the closest we get to seeing them without masks.
Yeah. I think, my topic today that I brought is conspiracy theories. And one of the big conspiracy theories on the left right now is this whole idea that Donald Trump has to get her on the Supreme Court because he can't win the election and he needs her vote because the Supreme Court is going to elect Donald Trump.
Right. Because they do everything Donald Trump wants. They're just in lockstep with the president of the United States.
This is another example of one of these bizarre conspiracy theories that the left has, and which, the mainstream media is always running around debunking conspiracy theories unless they're
from the left.
The ones producing them.
And the Supreme Court is one. Another one is my wife was in the doctor's office yesterday, and she heard a couple talking there, and they were talking about Donald Trump leaving the hospital. He'd only been there 3 days, and they said, "Oh, he must not have really had COVID. The president didn't have COVID. This is a scam that he's running so that we'll all like him." And this is the latest conspiracy theory that he supposedly doesn't have COVID. The problem the Democrats have is they've created so much fear around COVID that they want everybody to be extremely fearful, and so they can't accept that somebody can get COVID,
Right.
go into the hospital for 3 days, and then kind of resume normal life.
Right. The reality doesn't match the hype.
But the mainstream media has actually been promoting this particular conspiracy theory. Michael Moore was on television talking about it, and
The guy who said his thoughts and prayers were with COVID.
Yeah. Yeah. That
About a
guy.
dirtbag, yeah.
and then the final conspiracy theory, which I have been following lately, is this one that somehow after the election, that's the Supreme Court's going to choose Donald Trump,
Right.
and he didn't get COVID, but the real kicker is that somehow after the election he is going to swear in Ivanka
As vice president.
as vice president.
I've heard that.
What?
And
I have
throw-
not heard
and
this.
throw Pence overboard.
What?
That's another conspiracy theory that's out there. So I just want to put something on the record, okay? I have been accused of being a conspiracy theorist because I actually believed in true things over time, and
The ultimate conspiracy against the
right.
left. The truth. Yeah.
right, the ultimate conspiracy theorists are in fact the fake news. It is the mainstream media.
No argument. I can't argue with that.
No, absolutely. I mean, when you have these folks are getting up to the podium and getting up in front of the cameras, and they are just speaking everything that you're saying as though it is fact. Even just the idea that they would give, like you were speaking about, we talk about whether or not we should give the extreme left air a lot of the time. They give them all the room that they want to move, and they just put them up on this pedestal as though everything that they're saying is true. There's no fact checks, unlike Chris Wallace at the debate last week. Everything that Trump said, well, we don't. I have right here that might not be might not be
that's been
true.
debunked.
None of that was available for Joe Biden, apparently, because God forbid you actually check the words of a leftist.
Well, I think that what we really need to let everybody know is that this amazing treatment that Trump had at Walter Reed was the bleach treatment. And so the reason he had such a miraculous recovery
Injected it right into his arm, I think.
and
Yeah.
he's healthy
Yeah.
is the bleach
That's what
treatment.
we all just need to do. Yeah.
That was the day he announced that he had COVID on Twitter. That was there were versions of that meme everywhere. Pictures of Trump injecting himself with bleach,
Yeah, or drinking
with
from
a bleach
Clorox
IV,
bottle.
drinking from it,
Going
and
for a
all
tan.
of these things. Yeah, and Floyd, you sent me just the probably the strangest story of the day which was that when you scroll down that thread, you see actual Satanists pronouncing literal curses on the President of the United States.
Yeah, I was really happy that we covered that. I didn't see it anywhere else.
No, I didn't either.
Anywhere else. And to me, that's just screaming out as an interesting story because, I mean, it wasn't one person. I mean, you could ignore one person.
It was a whole thread.
You could ignore two people, but I counted at least 15 to 20 people, and they're writing in Sanskrit.
There are a bunch of different languages, a bunch of different forms of curses. And it just occurs to me when you see one candidate whom Bible-believing Christians, a lot of Bible-believing Christians tend to like, and Satanists hate. I mean, I don't know. That just tells me something that I think
is
is
story about the
significant.
woman who joined the Church of Satan in New Hampshire or whatever. I mean,
Last week.
What does that tell you?
Well,
there is a...
This gets to a story that I've told before, I think in the newsroom, but I've never really talked about it publicly. I have a friend who lives around the White House. He lives like 2 blocks away. And part of his ministry is he goes around the White House every night. He takes a walk and he prays for the president and the first lady and all of the people that work in the White House, and it's basically a prayer ministry that he has. He said the most amazing thing was since they started the rioting there in Lafayette Park, he said over in one corner are 4 burning barrels every night, and around it are Satanists doing incantations around these burning barrels. And yet that gets no news coverage. Now, if we've ever had a political race that was in fact a spiritual battle between, good and evil, and
this one is as clear as one ever could be.
It's extremely clear, and I think the Twitter feed proves it. Yeah, that was one of my favorite articles, Josh. Thanks for writing it.
Well, I'm glad you pointed it out. I think Andrew wrote it.
Andrew wrote it, indeed.
Good job, Andrew.
A fun team effort.
I'm sure Josh wrote the headline.
Indeed.
Yeah, but any factual errors we can attribute to Andrew.
That's right.
I just don't know. I mean, I know Floyd and George and I have talked about it. I can't remember if you and I have, Andrew. It's just such a strange situation we have where there are a lot of people who I would consider to be really solid evangelical Christians who also, if they don't hesitate with Trump, and hesitation's fine, I suppose, but they actually work against him. Right. And, okay, in a vacuum, I can kind of understand that. There's some stuff about Trump none of us likes. But then when you see the literal worshipers of Satan align against him, how in the world do you align
yourself with them?
Yeah, said better, how in the world do you find yourself aligning yourself with them?
Well,
I've yet to hear an explanation for that. Actually, you know what? We got a friend I'm actually going to ask that to. He's an evangelical, solid Christian, very anti-Trump. I'm going to ask you, how do you work this out in your mind?
Well, that's one of the reasons my prayer has been that Christians have discernment. I think that there's a lack of discernment in the Christian church. There's a lack of discernment
say that again.
Amongst the clergy. And, to have discernment, you have to be in the Bible, and you have to be reading the Bible. If you don't read the Bible, then you don't have a marker by which to discern and understand current culture. So that's why daily prayer, daily Bible study are so important to a successful discerning walk with Jesus Christ. And so one of my prayers is that Christians will have discernment. There's never a perfect choice.
Right.
In any election.
Right.
And Donald Trump would never, say he's a perfect man. But if you discern the policies behind these people, whether it's supporting traditional marriage or supporting, the end to the killing of children, Donald Trump has been better, not perfect on those issues, but better than his opponent. Clearly is, who is, for abortion anytime, for any reason, anywhere.
Trump's
And
arguably the most pro-life president we've ever had, certainly
Unquestionably.
in the modern age.
And it's exactly what you're saying. Like the lack of understanding of the word currently. I spoke to Allie Beth Stuckey about this when she wrote her most recent book. We did a live interview from the office, and the idea that no one has gone into the word and said, okay, the results do matter. It's just essentially this new kind of hippie Christianity where Jesus is just there to look at you, smile, and say, you're doing good, you're looking good. It's not about what is actually, what matters to the Lord, what is deemed good to the Lord and what is deemed bad to the Lord. And you have a generation of people who have not been in the Word enough to see, even Christ is sometimes harsh in the way that he speaks to folks. This Samaritan woman, for example, I mean, is it generally what we would perceive nice to say to someone, oh, you're right, the man you're with now is not your husband and you have had 5 husbands, you need to hear me directly now. Like, you can't go and get your husband.
well, Scripture is
Right, you don't
full
have one.
of God chastising people.
Yes.
Right.
The people he loves, he chastises. It's like a parent and a child. You don't discipline your child because you want to get mad at your child. You discipline them when they're not living up to your expectations and not doing what's right. So
Or doing something dangerous
or
to
doing
themselves.
something or doing something dangerous.
And the current young Christian culture doesn't discipline their children all that much anyway, for the same reason, because they lack.
They don't discipline themselves.
They don't exactly. They lack a standard. And of course, I'm overgeneralizing. There are plenty of great Christian parents out there now.
Well, if that's the case, I blame the clergy.
Absolutely.
I blame the ministers who haven't been bringing the word to people. And, to be a successful Christian, you have to be in the Word of God. That's God's counsel to us.
That's right.
It's good stuff. So talking about fear,
I was going to quote Timothy there to give you a lead in.
you were going to what?
I was going to quote Timothy there to give you a lead in. That God has
That's
not given us the spirit of fear.
No,
Well,
fear not, for I am the Lord your God. That phrase is in the Bible hundreds
Over
of
and
times.
over and over again. That's right.
Well, you're both right, and he hasn't given us a spirit of fear. And George, I remember you and I talking after the first presidential debate when Trump was probably overly aggressive, and I think a lot of conservatives were sort of frustrated with the way that went. And I remember saying, well, the whole thing just didn't bother me, and I think it was because I'm just not really afraid of what's going to happen with it. I mean, God's in control no
Sure.
matter what. And we all know that we're not given a spirit of fear. But speaking of fear, as we all know, the president was released from the hospital yesterday evening on the East Coast. And before he left, he tweeted out, I don't know what the mainstream media would cover if it weren't for his tweets. He tweeted out, I'll be leaving the great Walter Reed Medical Center today at 6:30 p.m. We've got this on the screen. Feeling really good. Don't be afraid of COVID. Don't let it dominate your life. We have developed under the Trump administration some really great drugs and knowledge. I feel better than I did 20 years ago! ! So you would think that this would be great news. The president's leaving the hospital. Oh no!
It is absolutely great news.
It is,
But
great
it's
news.
not. Well, it's any normal person.
It's
it is.
fabulous
Any normal
news.
person it is. The president of the United States. Forget party. Forget those divides.
And there are
It's good
some on the
president's
left
leaving.
who are like, even Joe Biden
Yeah.
tweeted out, we're praying for
well,
the president and
under
his,
duress.
absolutely under duress, but at least he did it. It was the right thing to do, and
Joe-
he did it. And there are plenty of people on the left who knew it was the right thing to do
And did the
and
opposite.
didn't do it anyway.
Joe Biden is secretly hoping Trump kicks the bucket so he can go up and comfort Melania himself. Whisper sweet nothings into her
Is that another
ear.
conspiracy?
That sounds like a
Anyway,
conspiracy
it's
theory
not.
to me.
It's not a conspiracy if it's true.
Let me just talk about that tweet for a minute, Josh, because I believe that tweet won the election.
Oh, why
And
do
I'll
say
tell
that?
you why.
That's a strong statement, Floyd.
Yes. That tweet won the election. And I'm glad the news media is covering it, and I hope they cover it for the next week.
I think that's a safe bet.
Okay. The reason he won the election is because elections are often about a contrast. Where's the country headed?
Right.
Donald Trump sees the country getting better.
Right.
Joe Biden sees the country getting worse. Joe Biden has fear. If you're going to choose optimism versus fear, you're going to choose optimism every time. And if they think they can win an election, I know Joe Biden was out there the other day talking about his national mask mandate, and all the governors need to get online, and we got to wear our masks when we're driving our cars, and we got to wear our masks, all the time. It's fear versus hope. Hope versus fear. That is the election right there. And people are going to choose hope over fear. And so I love that tweet. I love the reaction. I love the fact that the news media is going crazy about it. And I hope, Joe Biden continues down this path of, we're all going to die.
Yeah, that's
aided by the national news media.
Aided by the national news
The New
media.
York Times had this piece this morning, I'm sure you saw it, that the headline, I believe, was Rational Fear. And essentially what they were doing, it was an anti-tweet piece. They were coming direct. They didn't say this, but they were coming directly against President Trump. And they essentially were saying, it's like, remember The Fly? Be afraid. Be very afraid. I mean, that's some obscure movie quote, but that was a
Wonderful Jeff Goldblum vehicle.
great. If you like Jeff Goldblum, you don't want to miss that.
And
film.
who doesn't
Was I
love
born
Jeff
then?
Goldblum? No, you were not.
No,
You weren't even
gosh,
born,
no,
you weren't
yeah,
even born
you
when
were-
that movie came out.
I'm not sure your daddy was
Plus-
born when that
Yeah.
movie came
It
out.
was a remake of a movie
Yeah.
from before I was born.
Long
with
time
Vincent
ago.
Price. Yeah. Back when Vincent Price played good guys. Anyway, that's what the New York Times wants from us. They want us to be afraid. And they called it rational fear. They said, Trump said you shouldn't be afraid. Here are all the reasons you should be. And that's literally, I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but it's literally the point they were making. Here, 200 and something thousand people have died. That number may be actually smaller than the real number because there are X number of unexplained deaths that might be related to COVID. The left has nothing to do with their fear. That's the problem. You have two classes of people on the left. Probably more than that. That's unfair. But I'm going to break them into two classes of people. You've got people who they don't have a spirit that is not of fear, right? They don't have that 2 Timothy spirit that says don't be afraid. So they are afraid. Then you've got another group of people, I would say higher up on the left, who love that they are afraid because other people's fear gives them power. Michael Crichton, one of his latter books was called State of Fear, and it was actually about climate change, and he was debunking climate change, and he was basically saying climate change is an instrument used by governments to instill fear in people so that they can control them. And that is all this is. This is about making a people, and I agree with you, Floyd, I hope Trump's fear, no pun intended, every time. So I do think that's a winning point for Donald Trump in November. But it's not an accident. That's a tactic. It is a behavior of the left that arises out of who they are and what they believe, but it is also a tactic of the left that is designed to drive people to vote for them so that they will be taken care of, so that they won't have to fear anymore. There won't be any more mass shootings if Joe Biden is in charge because Beto's going to put on his cape and they're all going to go away.
He's
Whatever.
already beaten the NRA.
Exactly, he has. And I haven't heard from
He's
the
done it
NRA
before.
in months because not since Beto came on the scene, they've completely disappeared. That's what they want. The left wants to make you afraid of something and then put on their cape and come in and save you from it. And then you give them money. It's that simple.
And then they live the high life with it.
Exactly.
And in the case of Joe Biden, for 50 years living the high life, and he hasn't done anything. I mean, he has virtually no achievements for 50 years.
So let me ask you a question. I love where the discussion has gone here. I was originally going to ask, why is it that the left is just, or liberals in general, are just sort of pathologically fearful? I think you answered that question, George.
Yeah, I think there's one other reason why, though.
Okay.
And I'll add this to what George has said. Part of the reason that these people are so fearful is because they don't believe in God and they don't believe in the afterlife. And if you don't understand that, this is where
survive at all costs.
This is where the worldviews clash. I'm looking forward to a better place, and I'm looking forward, to being with my Savior for eternity. Okay, the left isn't. This is all they have, because we were all created by some great cosmic accident, and when the lights go out, the lights go out.
My old pastor, Adrian Rogers, used to say, for folks who don't know the Lord, this is as good as it's ever going to get.
Right. It's pretty rough.
For folks who do know the Lord, this is as bad as it's ever going to get. There's hope in that too. But when you think about this, is as good as it's ever going to get for those people. Yeah, they have every motivation to hang on as tight as possible. I know we're running short on this segment. I do want to ask one super quick question, though. As I was thinking about this, I've been trying to tease out why have some... I think there are actual conservatives who disagree with Trump and don't support him. I think it's possible to be conservative and not support Trump. But what makes them different? What makes them different from conservatives who just gung-ho support Trump? And likewise, what has peeled off some Democrats to support Trump? And I wonder if it is just kind of that perspective, if it's fear versus individuality, optimism, courage, take the bull by the horns. Is that one of the divides that we're seeing right now? Does that explain
That's
how
one of
politics
them.
are realigning?
There's a second one, though, and when you look at especially all of the Republican consultants that are against Trump, it's all about money.
Yeah, that's
okay.
That's influence and power.
Let's face it. The Republicans have been sucking on the teat of government as much as the Democrats, okay? There's a reason why Washington, D.C. is so absolutely fabulous. There's a reason why, they all live in, 8,000 square foot homes. There's a reason why they all drive Mercedes and Lexus and, all of the fanciest cars. And it's not because they're underpaid. That city sucks money like a vampire out of the rest of the country, and they live, sloppy rich there. And it's, secretaries there make $80,000 a year. Is that because they're
really
government,
really
they're
good
government
secretaries?
They're government, servants. The whole notion of the whole government servant thing is dead. And Washington, D.C., it's abominable. Whether you're Republican or Democrat, it truly is the swamp.
It is.
And it's really hard to drain, as Donald Trump is showing us. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of these Republican establishment types just don't like him, because they're going after... He's going after their largesse, too.
One of the reasons that we see so much fear, I think, is because the mainstream media is complicit in trying to drive it. I mentioned the New York Times earlier. One of the main tools that they use, especially this time of year, is polling. And they really want to push this narrative of Joe Biden just dominating the polls right now. I was in just trying to come up with what polls I was going to talk about today. There was one that came out this weekend, and I thought, by Tuesday that might be kind of old news, but people are still talking about it. It's an NBC Wall Street Journal poll that showed Biden up 14 points over Trump. There was another one that came out today from CNN, had him up 16 points.
Man, those are like the leads Hillary had before Trump beat her.
Yeah, pretty close. And there was a lot of consternation, about 80% of it coming from me, about the reaction to these polls on Twitter and social media over the weekend, especially this NBC Wall Street Journal poll, which really just got under my skin because I expect this from NBC. Wall Street Journal, I still have some respect for. I think they still often do a very good job. And for them to put out this poll, I was just very disappointed. And here's why. And here's why the right and voters on the right should not be afraid of this poll. And I have said this many times. You guys all work with me. You've heard me on this rant before. I'm going to rant again. This poll was a national poll. So that's one thing. That's one reason why this thing's next best thing to meaningless, okay? Because it is probably not all that bad a measure of the national popular vote, national popularity contest. But because it's a national poll, it's going to over-survey places like California and New York because they have very high populations. It's also a poll conducted on landlines. Who do you know? Right. Who has a landline anymore?
A lot of the people that still have landlines are the ones that had subsidized government landlines.
Yeah, exactly.
And so there's a lot of landlines out there that still exist because the government pays for them.
I have a landline. I have a landline because I actually get a cheaper deal with my cable company. Yep. Cable, internet, and the phone is cheaper than cable and internet without a phone because they sell my number, I'm sure, to telemarketers. The joke's on them because I have a phone, it's plugged in, and the ringer's been off for 3.5 years. I imagine my voicemail has been completely full for 3 years.
And think of all those
and 3
polls
months.
you couldn't have responded
That's
to.
exactly right.
You could have turned
He's
this
not in the
around
sample.
yourself, George.
I am not in
George
this
is not
sample.
in the
No,
sample.
I have not been polled.
Wait, we're talking about surveys and not a Polish person?
Yeah, sorry. We're
I thought
talking
we were
about
talking about
actually
somebody
when
from
people
Krakow.
call you and ask you questions.
Oh.
Sorry, I should have explained that better at the beginning. The other reason that this poll is terrible, and I really mean meaningless, like it reaches the point of lying to me. It reaches the point of dishonesty to me because they are polling registered voters, not likely voters. There's a poll of, I think, 800 registered voters. A third of them are not going to vote. Statistically, we know that a third, it's almost as bad as just doing a poll of adults, where 2/3 of them are not going to vote. You don't even know if they're registered. But registered voters, a third of them don't show up, and that actually plays higher on the Democrat side than the Republican, historically anyway. More Republicans show up to vote than Democrats do. When you... I don't disbelieve the number. When they say this, among this sample, Biden's up by 14 points, I don't have any problem with that. You see a lot of people left going, oh, that's a lie. I don't think it's a lie. I think that's the number they got. The lie is pretending that number means something. Mm-hmm. The number means nothing. That 14 points has no reflection. Only the weakest casts the weakest of shadows on what the actual election results will be.
Well, because at this point, and at UMass Lowell, I spent quite a bit of time with professors who were in the Center for Public Opinion. Now, at this point, polling has become, instead of the public opinion driving the polls are built to drive the public opinion,
right.
to make
That's
you
exactly
think
right. That's my point.
a certain thing, depending on the questions they ask and the samples, like you were saying. These horribly sampled and horribly questioned polls result in the wider populace believing more widely, the people that don't want to break in and look at those numbers, the margin for error, who was sampled. People who don't want to do a little bit of digging are just going to go around thinking, oh, he's going to get blown out of the water.
Right.
Well,
because look at the numbers.
The reason the pollsters are polling that way is because they're counting on ballot harvesting to get all of these registered voters, including the dead ones, to vote this time, George.
So you guys, tell me if I'm wrong, because
You're wrong.
Okay, let me ask the question, then tell me if I'm wrong. I really wasn't surprised that NBC would pull something like this. That doesn't surprise me a bit. They're NBC. I was disappointed that Wall Street Journal would do that. Is that me? Should I just give up hope on all establishment media outlets at this point?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I think we need to put you into a counseling program, George, because
I'm George.
Even the Wall Street Journal and Fox News.
That's hard. I know.
It's going to break your heart.
Fox has been.
It's going to break your heart.
Yeah. Fox still has some high points on it. Tucker Carlson, is still worth watching. I still like the 5, but yeah, the Wall Street Journal was kind of the last great hope for me for the establishment media, and All right, I'm going to have to take a couple of days off and go into mourning, I guess, for the Wall Street Journal.
Well, anybody
I'll be
that's
wearing a
still
black
reading
shirt
the
on
mainstream
Thursday.
media isn't looking for the truth. If you want to find the truth,
Well,
you've got to
yeah,
walk a
that's
different path.
true. That's
and
true.
the people that are committed to the truth are the people in this room and the people in the alternative media, because we're going to search out the truth. And that's
is
what we
our
do
goal,
every
yeah.
day.
Equipping people with the truth. That's what we do at the Western Journal, or at least it's what we try to do.
And don't forget, we've got this new subscription program that is really
That's right.
great.
If you want this mug, there's only one place to get it, westernjournal.com/join. If you subscribe to the Western Journal, one of the options, one of the subscription plans includes this mug. Right now, this is the only one of these. I said this last time. This is the only one of these that exists, and I have it. And I know you're jealous about that. I don't blame you. But no, you don't. You don't have another one of those. No, you're not going to steal one
that
either.
mug.
Yeah, come on. Bring it. I think I said that last time. There's only one, but we are making more. And you can get yours by going to westernjournal.com/join and subscribing for one of our plans that includes this mug. There are, of course, lots of other benefits to subscribing. I have another ask to make of you as well.
The biggest, before you move on to
Sure.
your new ask, the biggest benefit of subscribing, in my opinion, is to make sure we can continue to produce the kind of journalism that we produce. Journalism is expensive. We've got some great writers that are producing some
None
really
of them are
They're
at
all
this
out
table,
there.
but we do have some great writers.
that are producing some really interesting reporting, and a lot of that's not funded by anything other than our subscribers. The subscribers make that possible. So not only do you get the fancy mug, but you're going to
fancy.
continue to get the great reporting that we provide here at Western Journal.
One other thing that you can do to support us is you may be watching us on Facebook right now. You may be listening to us on Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. But we really need your support on YouTube and getting our viewership up on YouTube. Now, that's tough because YouTube doesn't like us. YouTube's owned by Google, and I don't think I have to tell anybody watching this what Google thinks about conservative media. But nonetheless, we ask you to head over to our YouTube channel to subscribe and to click that bell so that you will be notified every time a new episode of WJ Live appears there. We need your support there. We need to break through that big tech tyranny if we're going to reach the people that we need to reach with the truth, and that's really what this is all about. Thank you for watching WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal today. We'll be back in a couple of days to equip our listeners with the truth once more.